is going to come up because it's been going on since we've been recording here. Elon and Trump seem to be in a bit of a spat, Joe. You want to check the tweet that Elon just put out a little bit ago?
Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day. Jesus Christ.
I'm not participating in any of that conversation between Elon and
Have a
Trump.
nice day, DJD. Someone should take his phone away.
They're going back and forth about different things. And
Jesus Christ, that's a crazy thing to say. How does he know? Does he know that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files? Or does he have access to the Epstein files?
I don't know how he would, but I'm just staying out of the Trump-Elon thing. That's way outside my lane.
What the are they doing?
I know my lane, and that ain't it.
I just don't. I mean, I understand he owns Twitter. I think it's bad for your mental health. I think posting things public all day and arguing with people all day is bad for you.
Well, you raise a great point. Sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
Half of what we have to respond to.
All right, so Joe Rogan just had Patel, the director of the FBI, on his podcast to talk about Epstein, and I don't think this could have gone any worse for him. It was brutal. Like, he spent 20 minutes trying to convince Joe that Epstein didn't kill himself, that there are no tapes from the island, and all the conspiracy theories about him are fiction. And then after all that, they react to Elon's tweet about how Trump is in the Epstein files, and that's why they're not being released. And Cash just had no comment on it. You know, he didn't deny it for some reason. And even Alex Jones is like, why is the director of the FBI, who I support, destroying himself in front of the world? So this was insane. I couldn't believe what I was listening to. I mean, I don't think there's a single person that believes what Cash is saying here about Epstein, and I'm sure he knows it. I mean, all the comments on this clip say something like, this might be the biggest lie ever told on JRE, and dude is lying through his teeth, zero respect for him, and they're just insulting our intelligence at this point, and Cash Patel is hiding evidence and protecting Epstein clients. And obviously Joe knows there's something fishy going on here too, and he doesn't trust Cash either, but he doesn't really call him out. You know, he questions him a little bit, but he probably knows Cash is just way in over his head, and all he can do at this point is lie. You know, he's just too deep in it. So Cash keeps trying to tell him that there's footage of Epstein in his cell, which shows like whatever, you know, even if you have that, nobody's going to believe it. And I don't know what that's going to prove. You know, Cash even said the video's boring. It's just him sitting there in his cell. So I don't know how that's going to prove that he wasn't murdered. And then also Joe mentions how originally they claimed there was no footage and it was deleted. And you can tell he doesn't know what to say. He's just like, we'll ask the people who are in charge then. And it just gets awkward.
I'm not saying every single camera in the place was working. I'm saying we've got footage and you're getting it. Mm-hmm. And then you can make up your own mind, and the theories can continue. But my job,
so you became aware of this footage recently.
The ones that we're looking at, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but this is like an article from quite a while ago that was saying that the footage was mistakenly erased.
Look, I mean, it goes back to the same. Ask the people that were in power then. I mean, I get it that you want to hold me to account for their actions, and
no, I'm not saying,
not you.
I'm not saying that.
Not you. Just the public in general, and that's okay.
What's confusing to everybody today? First of all, it's very confusing because AI can kind of make anything.
You, after having looked at it, this ain't gonna be AI.
You don't think so?
It's just not great. You know, it's like if it were AI, like someone wanted to come in and make it, they'd make it better.
But why would you make it better when people could, you could have ambiguous footage that is, totally generated by AI. I mean, AI can generate blurry images. AI can generate night vision. How much can you talk about what you've seen?
Not yet. Just what I've told you.
Can you say you've seen anything?
No, that's the point, that there's nothing in there, like in the video. You guys will be bored.
You're talking about the video of the murder or the suicide.
The suicide.
Yeah, so it's hilarious that everyone knows something's up. Nobody trusts him, not even Joe. And I'm sure Cash knows that as well, but he just has no other option than to lie. And he kept complaining about how people fuel conspiracy theories that aren't true. But before he became head of the FBI, he used to entertain all those theories. You know, on Joe's pod, Joe asked him if he ever questioned Epstein's suicide, and he says no. And you can tell he's lying because also he had previously said it doesn't look like side to him, and he was highly skeptical of it all. But now that he's the head of the FBI, he conveniently has done a complete 180, and he thinks all those theories are ridiculous and people should stop spreading them.
What did you think before you got in office? Did you think that Epstein was murdered?
No.
No suspicion at all of it?
But I have a different background, right?
Right.
So I was a public defender back in the day. I used to spend a lot of time in jails and a lot of time in segregated housing units. I've spent a lot of time in federal detention facilities as a public defender before, talking to my clients, so I kind of know how those work. Yeah. So I agree with you. This doesn't look right. It doesn't look like a suicide. But is this Justice Department going to investigate it? Probably not. Murdered in segregated housing in isolation after being on suicide watch in a place in a detention center that I've physically been in myself, it would be fiction.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but what I was told, what I'd read, was that the guards were not paying attention or were sleeping.
Well,
right?
And in short order, you'll see it.
Is that correct?
Well, it's hard to surmise that from a video, right? Like,
right.
Where they and look, do guards doze off on the night shift? Yeah. What happens is in these units, there's supposed to be 24/7 guard duty on him directly. And from what I was able to learn in this, in the lead up to his suicide is the guard fell asleep. Now, I don't really buy that. And do you know what happened to these guards? Supposedly they were going to get charged, but I've never heard anything that happened to these prison guards. Maybe we should try to find them and let's talk to them.
And it's funny, Cash keeps talking about how secure the jail is and how nobody could ever get in there and be impossible to murder him. Because then just like a couple minutes after that, Joe starts talking about the missing footage and he's like, yeah, maybe jails just aren't run very well. They're not very efficient. And Cash is like, yeah, it's not like Fort Knox or anything.
There's just no way that you could have run an op and had people go into that cell and not have any video of it and not have any people come out and say, hey, yeah, I saw that guy. He shouldn't have been there, the guard or this guy. There's just no access points into places like this in the detention center he was in, which I've been in. It's just in my experience, that is not doable.
It's not doable even for the most powerful and wealthiest people in the world?
Yeah.
Missing jail video from the first Jeffrey Epstein suicide, so for the first attempt, has been found. So maybe, let's put it into perspective, jails are not the most efficient, best-run places. Yeah. It's not like
Fort Knox?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
We're working with what we got.
Right.
And Joe obviously doesn't think Epstein killed himself. He's been saying that since the day he died. And he doesn't just say, I think he was killed or he might have been. Joe says he was, like, for sure. And he once said he knows some people who think he wasn't, but there's a reason they think that. They have a vested interest in it. Just like Cash here, like he's kind of just describing this interaction perfectly.
What's going on here?
The craziest thing that they murdered that guy in jail, and it's just like, sweep.
Yeah.
That's all done.
And by the way,
let's concentrate on Ukraine now.
Yeah, nobody actually believes he killed himself. I haven't met anybody left wing, right wing, center, apolitical. Everybody's like, that's kind of sketchy.
Yeah, I've met some people that believe it, but they have a reason to believe it. It's like they have this like vested interest in wanting to believe it.
Yeah,
it's
the skeptics. Yeah,
not even necessarily skeptics. It's like maybe they have some weird connection to it that they don't want you to know about. They want to make it look like it's not that big a deal, and they got him.
But at this point, how Epstein died, I mean, that's not really that important. People mostly just want the list and the tapes and the clients convicted. But of course, that's never going to happen. Like, Joe tries to ask him if there's videos from the island, and Cash is like, well, we're going to give you everything we can, which probably means everything we're allowed to give you. And everyone knows whatever they release will be an absolute nothing burger. But Cash, the director of the FBI, has the audacity to sit here and say once they release whatever bullshit they have, their jobs will be done, which is insane. No Epstein clients have been arrested. There's no list that has been revealed, and he's telling us his job is done. And what's wild to me is not once during this does he say he's going to continue to investigate it. He's going to continue to try to go after the clients. He's going to make sure he seeks justice for the victims. He never says any of that. He almost says the opposite. He's basically like, pretty much everybody has been implicated already. Everything's public. And we'll put out whatever bullshit we can, but there are no tapes, so people just need to move on from it. It's also crazy because when Joe asks about the tapes, he says, we'll give you what we can, but we're not going to re-victimize his victims. We're not putting that shit back out there, which is such a weird thing to say. I don't know what he means by that. I mean, you could just censor the victims, or you could just arrest the people in the tapes. And what's insane is some of the victims sued the FBI for withholding and delaying the release of the files. So they want everything out there. And Cash, he used to be really passionate about releasing the list. He'd get all worked up about it. He's like, where's the list? Why won't they release it? And he would blame the FBI. So it's like he's talking about himself now. It's ridiculous. Like, his whole tune has changed. He's much more like, guys, we need to get over this. Stop talking about these theories. And now he just wants people to forget about it. It's pathetic.
But what about the video from the island?
Again, we're going to give you everything we can, and people have to remember, we're not going to re-victimize women. We're not going to put that shit back out there. It's not happening, because then he wins. Not doing it. You want to hate me for it? Fine.
You say that the FBI has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. That seems like an evil thing to do, regardless of who may be embarrassed in the release of that list. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest, the largest scale in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list. What the hell are the House Republicans doing? They have the majority. You can't get the list?
And is there video from the island?
Not of what you want. The people out there have filled the void with can't wait to see X, Y, or Z.
Right, speculation.
And I'm like,
put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are. God knows the FBI and DOJ aren't going to do anything.
But I mean, so many people have been implicated, right, already. And some of that information, what they did to Prince Andrew and everybody else is already out there. And so that's the conspiracy stuff that me and Bongino and the folks have to say, look, we will give you everything we can, and then we will have done our job.
This is why I'm tired of the Republican majority saying they're going to get the job done and failing.
Closing here, I want to just be very clear. Republicans could get Epstein's list out now? Like, how would that process work?
Simple. One subpoena to the FBI. Give me the list.
So this guy is just absolutely spineless. You know, he did a complete 180 and he's clearly trying to bullshit everyone. And him saying that there are no tapes is contradicting what the Attorney General Pam Bondi said. She said they have thousands of videos that they're looking through.
No, the FBI, the FBI, they're reviewing, there are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn. And there are hundreds of victims. And no one victim will ever get released. It's just the volume, and that's what they're going through right now. The FBI is diligently...
And also during that podcast, it's so funny. At one point, Joe brings up how there's an autopsy report that said Epstein didn't kill himself, which of course Cash wasn't aware of. But he's like, well, you know, you could find an expert to say anything. And he brings up how he used to be a public defendant. And he's like, I defended some of the worst people alive, like child traffickers, which is a wild thing to say while you're talking about Epstein.
She said her office had done a complete investigation, taking into consideration information gathered by law enforcement in making the determination.
So this is a perfect example of going back to my public defender and prosecutor days. Mm-hmm. This is what we call a war of experts. You can always find someone to come in and say the opposite.
Right.
And I used to do it all the time. I mean, I represented some of the worst humans that you can possibly imagine on earth, literally. The guys that were trafficking children from Mexico into America.
So I'm sure that makes people trust him more. And also during this podcast, Cash kept saying, like, don't you think if I had the tapes or the list, I would release it? Don't you think I'd prosecute people? So he's basically just like, you need to trust us on this, even though he's contradicting the Attorney General. He's contradicting himself from a couple years ago, and he's clearly hiding something. But we're expected to just trust him. You know, also, like, everybody knows the government has been lying forever. They have been protecting Epstein for decades, but now we're expected to believe them. So I don't know how he thinks people will just trust him on this. And if the files really implicate Trump, of course, Cash isn't going to release them. You know, he's not going to go against Trump. He's like a Trump sycophant. And he literally wrote a children's book with him as the main character. So obviously if Trump is in the files, which, I mean, people know he is, like, he's been on the flights, it's just to what extent. But if they really do show something bad, obviously that would be a terrible look for Cash and pretty much everybody involved. So it would make sense why they don't want it to come out. But like Elon said, they could easily prove him and everyone wrong if they just release all the documents, all the lists, whatever they have, unredacted. But it's not looking like that's going to happen. And apparently we just have to trust Cash. You know, there's no reason he would ever want to lie to us.
Do you think that myself, Bongino, and others would participate in hiding information about Epstein's grotesque activities? Or do you think we would also participate in not prosecuting people we had evidence to prosecute people on? Also, if I had a shred, me, Cash Patel, had a shred of evidence, the Russiagate guy, the Jan 6 guy, the COVID origins guy, had a shred of evidence that this guy was murdered, I would be the first guy to bring this case hard and fast. And I would even doing press conferences every week on it. Mm-hmm. The first guy. That's what I'm asking people to play out to their logical conclusion. But the problem is there's been like 15 years of people coming in and creating fictions about this that doesn't exist. Where's the videotape of an Epstein Island of X, Y, and Z committing these frauds? Why haven't you given it to us? Do you really think I wouldn't give that to you if it existed? Again, logical play out. If there was a video of some guy or gal committing felonies on an island and I'm in charge, Don't you think you'd see it?
If you have access to it.
If I have it, period.
Right.
If I have it.
So.
Where else would it be?
Right. If you have it.
Right.
But you can't say that you have it.
No, we're giving you everything we have.
So far.
Everything we have so far is
Have
the
you guys
universe.
gone over all the video that's available?
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. That's what takes so much damn time.
Right.
So this podcast cleared up nothing and only made people even more skeptical. And then Joe reading that Elon tweet at the end, that was just too perfect. You know, after all that, then he's like, holy shit, Elon just said that Trump's implicated. But of course, they try to move on pretty quick, and Joe doesn't have much to say about it, even though he knows Trump was well connected to Epstein. Like just a couple weeks ago, one of his guests brought up how Epstein's victim, who just allegedly killed herself, Virginia Guffrey, was recruited by Epstein at Mar-a-Lago, which I talked about over on Patreon. Also, Tim Dillon, he claims to have some inside information about the files, but he's scared to share it. I covered that too, along with a ton of other stuff. There's so much exclusive content on there. So if you enjoyed the channel, make sure you check it out. There'll be a link in the description.